Bring in member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Democrat from Minnesota, Senator Amy Klobuchar, and you're working on legislation on this. Given the conversation we've just been having, what can be done?
Well, Mika, back in February, I was on this show and said the same thing, and that is that we need rules of the road in place, and that's the bill that I have with Senator McCain and Senator Warner that's called the Honest Ads Act, and it simply says you guys got to follow the same rules that TV and radio and print does, and that you've got to put the ads out there, and then you've got to put disclaimers so we know who's paying for them. Facebook has voluntarily done that now since the Zuckerberg hearings. He said, okay, we'll follow the rules. And they've also said they'd support our bill. But until then, we have gotten no support for the bill. And we finally now suddenly, a bunch of the big media companies are saying, you know what? We're now establishing that this foreign entity, Russia, has tried to influence our election. They're getting bolder, as Dan Coates has said. The red lights are flashing, and it's time to protect ourselves before the next election. That is why they discovered these fake accounts that were basically trying to sow more discontent. And it wasn't about candidates. It was about issue ads. And current law says you've got to put those ads out there so people can see them. And ever since Facebook did that, these fake accounts haven't been buying those ads.
David Ignatius, pulling back a little bit and not just talking about the ads. We have discussed here how Facebook provides news to more than 50% of Americans, and asked, what if Brezhnev had tried to buy ads or infiltrate Walter Cronkite's broadcast on CBS in the 1970s? Would the government allow that to happen? Would that have been regulated? And in the case that we're talking about today, the person we're talking about today, who not only is running a Sandy Hook conspiracy, he appears to be provoking his viewers and listeners to assassinate Robert Mueller. If you look at the clip, that's certainly my opinion when you look at that clip. Facebook can't regulate that. That's a close call. I mean, that's a situation where the Secret Service should probably be called. If somebody is trying to get thousands and thousands of followers, to provoking them into assassinating Robert Mueller.
Let me take that question to Senator Klobuchar. We're an angry country. People say all kinds of things that sound like incitement to violence. We've been talking this morning about incitement to violence against journalists, among other things. Senator, how do you see the proper role of the federal government in reducing that kind of speech without going over the line, either the specific line or, in the case of Facebook, a desired line to be a community where lots of people can participate? How do you see that working?
Well, you can have programs, and if Facebook won't do it, other applications will, and other sites will, and that's where you can have rules of the road about civility. You also, of course, if someone's trying to incite or threaten or stalk someone, it can be a violation of criminal statutes. But when it comes to the president, someone once said this is a guy that wakes up every morning and tweets whatever he wants, but doesn't respect the amendment that allows him to do it. So while it may not be illegal for him to go after journalists, I think the President of the United States has an obligation to uphold and embrace our Constitution, and that means the First Amendment, and that means setting an example for the rest of the country. And that's not what he's doing with how he treats the press and how he treats individual reporters and gets his supporters to call them out. That's not leadership.
Senator, you also questioned officials at yesterday's hearing on family separations, and we want to play for viewers these comments from Department of Homeland Security and Health and Human Services officials trying to defend the administration's policy that separated hundreds of children from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border, comparing family detention centers to a summer camp.
With regard to the FRCs, I think the best way to describe them is to be more like a summer camp. These individuals have access to 24/7 food and water. They have educational opportunities. They have recreational opportunities, both structured as well as unstructured. There's basketball courts, there's exercise classes, there's soccer fields that we put in there.
Would you send your children to these centers? Ms. Higgins.
I
I certainly think that in general practice, people would prefer to be free to move about. I can tell you that the centers that I saw did, as described, have schools and.
So you would send your child to these centers? Yes? No?
That's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, that's difficult to answer, actually, because you wouldn't send your children there. I'll answer for her. People, as you said in your words, ma'am, you said people would prefer to be free. You don't take children and imprison them and think that a soccer field or a basketball court is going to replace their parents or their family. Are you idiots running this country? You seem like child abusers to me. You seem like people who kidnap children and make excuses for holding them indefinitely, deporting their families, and then saying it's like a summer camp. This is insane. This is insanity.
You know, Mika, the difference between a summer camp and what they're talking about is you get to go home from a summer camp and see your parents. And right now we have, because of this cold-hearted policy that should never have happened, we have 711 kids, that's 23 classrooms of children that are waiting to be reunited with their parents. And the kids I talked to at the border, the little boy who never knew if he'd see his mom again but thought she was looking for him, who's 10 years old and his mom flees Honduras because she's domestically abused, he didn't like being at that alleged summer camp. He wanted to be back with his mom.
I would think so.
Senator, let me ask you, 711 children, that's basically 711 Amber Alerts with these children spread across the country. If you called today to the agency involved here, could they tell you today where each of those children are in terms of location?
I think they know where the kids are, but they don't know where 433 of the kids' parents are, because many of them have been deported, they're scared, they're going back to countries where there's a lot of violence. And so you have a situation now where over half of those kids, they don't actually know where their parents are. And there's one in Minnesota where they've just found where the parents are. I cannot tell you the destruction of this policy. And in fact, one of the witnesses, Commander White from Health and Human Services, did admit under oath that he had told his superiors about the devastating effect this would have on kids. And that's exactly what all the pediatricians and doctors have said. So, yeah, maybe we'll fix this. Maybe we'll reunite because of pushing this administration, most of these parents with the kids. But we're literally just cleaning up a mess that they made instead of moving forward with comprehensive immigration reform, which our economy needs, which we should be doing for this country, which came through the Senate with a very strong vote, and yet this president keeps stopping it from happening.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, thank you very much. David
Well, it was great to be on.
Yeah, thank you. Please come back, especially to talk about this. David Ignatius and Clint Watts, thank you both as well. And the depravity, the violence, and the callousness of this policy says everything you need to know about this administration. Coming up, President Trump made a bold claim during his first official address to Congress. But the Justice Department says it can't find any evidence that what he said is true. We'll explain that ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.